Step out.
Can you tell me
Now.
why?
You're in a restricted area.
There's no sign. I'm parked legally.
I'm not asking. Step out.
I have a right to know why I'm being detained.
You're not being detained. You're being given an order.
An order needs a legal basis. What's yours?
My basis, I told you to.
That's not how this
You want to do
works.
this the hard way?
I want to do this the legal way.
Radio static crackles. The officer's hand moves to his cuffs. The metallic click cuts through the afternoon air in the courthouse parking lot. A legal parking space, a routine workday, a man in business attire refusing an unlawful command. The officer's confidence is absolute. His mistake is irreversible. In that moment, he didn't know he'd ended his career. The body cam captures everything: the legitimate parking spot, the lack of reasonable suspicion, the escalation built on ego. What happens next will cost the city hundreds of thousands and destroy one officer's future, all because he couldn't admit he was wrong. The confrontation started over nothing. The officer approached the vehicle in a courthouse parking lot at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. The car was parked legally between white lines, no expired meter, no posted restrictions. The driver sat behind the wheel reviewing documents on his phone. The officer's first command carried no explanation: step out. The civilian asked why. The officer repeated the command louder. Still no legal justification. The parking lot excuse came third, a driveway supposedly blocked. But courthouse security footage would later show no obstruction, no violation, just an officer who decided someone didn't belong. The driver remained seated, calm voice, direct questions, the kind of composure that comes from understanding exactly what the law requires. The officer interpreted this as defiance. His hand moved to his cuffs. Static crackled on his radio. What felt like authority was about to become the most documented mistake of his career. The driver wasn't panicking. That should have been the first warning. The officer's frustration mounted with each question. Every request for justification met with another command. I need you to comply. You're creating a disturbance. This is your last warning. But the parking lot remained quiet. No crowd, no disturbance. Just one man asking for the legal basis of a detention. The body cam caught the officer's voice rising. His stance widened. His hand stayed near his belt. This was no longer about parking. This was about a civilian who refused to submit without reason. I'm going to ask you one more time. And I'm going to ask you one more time, what violation am I being stopped for? Silence. Then the cuffs came out. That's ego, not safety. The officer made the decision that would trigger an internal investigation, a federal lawsuit, and a policy review that would cost the department more than his annual salary. The driver's hand stayed visible on the steering wheel. His voice stayed level. He asked for badge numbers. The officer ignored him. Inside the station booking area, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The officer filled out the arrest report with confident strokes. Charge, obstruction, justification, failure to comply with lawful orders. But every line he wrote dug the hole deeper. The civilian stood at the booking counter, still composed. Unlawful detention of judiciary official. The email chain started immediately. Captain, Deputy Chief, City Attorney. By 6 p.m., 7 people knew. By the next morning, the entire department would. The officer's body cam footage was flagged for review. The booking logs were preserved. The courthouse security footage was requested. Every second of the interaction was about to be analyzed by people whose job was finding liability. The justice's complaint arrived the next day. 4 pages. Typed. Procedurally perfect. It cited specific policy violations, constitutional protections, and case law. This wasn't an angry citizen yelling about mistreatment. This was a legal professional documenting civil rights violations with surgical precision. The officer was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, paid for now. But everyone knew what pending investigation meant when judiciary officials were involved. The union rep showed up within an hour. His advice was blunt. Don't talk to anyone. Don't post anything. Get a lawyer. The clock was ticking. The system was already moving. The IA investigation took 3 weeks. Investigators interviewed witnesses, reviewed footage, pulled radio logs. Every frame confirmed what the justice had stated. No violation, no reasonable suspicion, no lawful basis for the stop. The confrontation played on repeat in the review room, the officer's commands, the justice's calm questions, the escalation built on nothing, the arrest that never should have happened. Investigators pulled the officer's history, 7 complaints in 4 years, 3 for excessive force during stops, 2 for racial profiling allegations, all cleared through internal review, but patterns matter. When a state Supreme Court justice becomes number 8, the pattern becomes liability. The city attorney's office calculated exposure, false arrest, civil rights violation, unlawful detention of a judiciary official. The numbers climbed fast. Minimum settlement, $200,000. If it went to trial and the justice testified, potentially millions. The deputy chief called a meeting. The officers' union rep attended. The conversation was short. Resign with benefits, or face termination and lose everything. The officer took the deal. His badge was surrendered that afternoon. Desk cleared by 5 p.m. The lawsuit was filed 6 weeks later. Federal court, civil rights violation under Section 1983. The city's attorneys tried to negotiate before deposition started. The justice declined. This wasn't about money. This was about accountability. The body cam footage became public record. Local news picked it up. The story spread fast. Officer detained Supreme Court justice in courthouse parking lot for no reason. Community leaders called press conferences. Civil rights organizations demanded policy changes. The courthouse became a symbol, justice derailed by the very people sworn to uphold it. The city settled for $350,000. The agreement included mandatory training, reforms, body camera policy updates, and external review of detention procedures. The officer's termination stood. His certification was flagged. He would never work in law enforcement again. The justice gave one statement to the press. This happens to people every day. The only difference is I had the knowledge and position to fight back. Most people don't. The words carried weight. They reminded everyone watching that this story wasn't unique. It was just documented. 6 months after the settlement, the department issued new guidelines. Officers must provide legal justification before demanding identification or compliance. Supervisors must review all judiciary-involved incidents within 2 hours. Body cameras cannot be disabled during any public interaction. The policy memo cited the case without naming the justice, but everyone knew. The courthouse parking lot incident had rewritten department protocol. One ego-driven decision had changed how 800 officers would do their jobs. The officer's desk stayed empty for 3 months before someone else moved in. His nameplate went in a box. His service awards came down from the wall. Colleagues stopped mentioning his name. In law enforcement, career-ending mistakes become cautionary tales fast. The justice returned to the courthouse the next week. He parked in the same spot. No one approached his vehicle. The parking lot stayed quiet. But the lesson echoed. Authority without accountability isn't justice, it's just power. And power without legal basis is always one confrontation away from collapse. The termination became final in August. The officer appealed through his union. The arbitrator reviewed the footage, read the complaint, examined the pattern of prior incidents. The decision was unanimous. Termination upheld. Cause: unlawful detention, civil rights violation, abuse of authority. The officer never worked in law enforcement again. His certification was permanently revoked. Applications to other departments were rejected. The case followed him. Google his name. The first result was the body cam footage and settlement announcement. He tried security work. Private firms reviewed his record and declined. The liability was too high. One courthouse parking lot confrontation had destroyed 30 years of eligibility in any authority-based profession. The justice continued his work on the state Supreme Court. He never spoke publicly about the incident again, but the case appeared in legal training materials nationwide. Law schools used it to teach civil rights law. Police academies used it to demonstrate escalation failures. The parking lot confrontation became institutional memory. The final report from Internal Affairs ran 42 pages. It detailed every procedural failure: lack of reasonable suspicion, improper escalation, failure to provide legal justification, unlawful arrest, retaliatory detention. The conclusion was clear. The officer had prioritized ego over law. The courthouse installed new signage in the parking lot: visitor parking, judiciary parking, staff parking, clear designations. But everyone knew the signs weren't the problem. The problem was an officer who saw a black man in a nice car and assumed he didn't belong. The body cam stayed in evidence storage, footage archived, timestamp preserved, a permanent record of how confidence becomes liability when it's built on bias instead of law. The justice's car stayed parked in the same spot every workday. The officer's badge stayed locked in an evidence room. One career continued, one career ended. The difference came down to who knew the law and who assumed authority was enough. 2 years later, the department cited the case in annual training. New recruits watched the body cam footage in the academy. Instructors paused at key moments. This is where he lost his career. This is where ego replaced procedure. This is where accountability caught up. The officer never appeared in any follow-up reporting. No interviews, no statements, just silence, the kind that follows irreversible mistakes. The settlement money came from the city's liability fund. Taxpayers covered it. The officer paid with his career. The justice paid with time and emotional energy, fighting a system that should have protected him. Everyone lost something, but consequences fell hardest on the person who made the decision to escalate. The lesson spread through departments nationwide. Treat every stop like it's being recorded. Provide legal justification for every command. Assume nothing about who belongs and who doesn't. Because one parking lot confrontation proved that authority without accountability will always collapse under scrutiny. The courthouse parking lot looks the same now: white lines, asphalt, metered spaces. But the story lingers. Officers drive past and remember the training video. Community members park there and remember the lawsuit. The justice walks from his car to the courthouse entrance and remembers the afternoon his credentials meant nothing to an officer who'd already decided he was a threat. Could this have been prevented? Yes, with one question. What violation justifies this stop? The officer never answered it. He couldn't, because there was no violation, just bias dressed as authority. The body cam captured it all: the escalation, the unlawful arrest, the moment confidence turned into career-ending liability. The footage remains public record, a reminder that justice requires accountability. And accountability starts with admitting when you're wrong. The officer's badge stayed surrendered. The justice's work continued. The parking lot stayed quiet. The lesson stayed loud.